Hi, welcome back to Shark Recaps. Today I am going to explain a South Korean fantasy film called Vanishing Time, A Boy Who Returned. At the beginning of the movie, a girl named Soo-rin is interviewed by a child psychiatrist. When the doctor sets up a camera to record the interview, Soo-rin becomes nascently agitated. She asks her to repeat her story from the beginning. Soo-rin starts by claiming that her mother married Do Kyun a few years ago. Immediately after the marriage, her mother passed away, and since then, Soo-rin has been living with her stepfather Do Kyun. He is assigned to commission a construction site on a rural island named Hwano, so the two have to move and must relocate to the island. After her mother died, Soo-rin has never been happy. She doesn't like her stepfather and doesn't talk much. She visits a new school on the island where she has the choice to make many new friends. However, she decides to stay alone. Her stepfather has to work the whole night since he is the chief of a tunnel construction site. The inhabitants of the island cannot enter the construction area because of the explosions that may occur during the construction. One night, Soo-rin randomly scrolls down her phone and reads comments on her website about a wormhole. When her mom died, Soo-rin wanted to run far away from the world, and while searching the easiest methods to do that, she started to develop interest in wormholes, supernatural beings, and many more. She interacts with people on the internet about the aforementioned topics even on the school's desktop. She accidentally leaves her PC on, which lets her classmates to go through her comments and mocks her. While returning back home, Soo-rin encounters a boy named Sung-min who lives in an orphanage. Sung-min introduces himself and attempts to befriend Soo-rin. However, she ignores him. The next day during halftime, Soo-rin comes across Sung-min and his buddies talking about her article at the wormhole. Sung-min claims to have entered some other realm after reading it. Later that day, Sung-min follows her behind when she is walking home. When called out, he explains that he believes everything that she has written inside her article. Due to their common interest in supernatural techniques, the two become good friends. Soo-rin developed her own symbols to communicate with Sung-min secretly. They begin to use it every day to leave each other notes in Soo-rin's diary. Every day after school, they pass around town looking for souls. In one of such exploration, Sung-min brings Soo-rin to an abandoned house inside the jungle. They go through the house and converse for a long time while engraving on wax blocks. Soo-rin has begun to fall in love with Sung-min. She kisses him, suddenly making him fluster. One day, Soo-rin finds Sung-min and his three friends planning to watch the explosions at the construction site. She joins them and the children make their way through the woods so the adults would not notice them. When they move across the fenced site, one of the children backpedals and runs back home. The other four disguise behind a cliff waiting for explosions, however, become upset when no explosions take place. While strolling through the forest, they come across a tiny cave. They decide to enter it and go one after the other. Finally, they come across a vibrant glowing substance submerged in water at the end of the tunnel. Soo-rin assumes that it's a meteorite. Sung-min himself dive into the water and take the substance out. After being brought out of the cave, the substance stops shining. The children note that it looks like an egg. One of the guy claims that the egg might possibly belong to a time traveler. At once he was told by his grandfather that on complete moon nights, a cave appears in the mountains where the time traveler lives. The person who goes into the cave will come out as an older person. The other children do not believe him as true since they did not age. Soo-rin notices that her hairpin, a gift from her mom, is missing. She goes back into the cave to search for it alone, because the other guys protect the egg. She finds her pin, however, also notices that the glowing egg is back at its place. When she comes out confused, she notices that the egg has been broken and her friends are missing. She searches for them all over the jungle till it gets dark. In the end, she is lost in the forest and has to stay the night. The next day, a police force searches for the children inside the jungle. Detective On is appointed the head of the research. Soon, the police is able to find Soo-rin unconscious in the forest. Fortunately, she is breathing, meaning that she is still alive. In the hospital, the detective asks her about the other guys, so she tells him the whole story about the cave and the glowing egg. The detective and the adults do not believe the story is true. She even takes them to the jungle to reveal them the cave, however, cannot locate it. It is sort of as if it disappeared after the entire moon night. Then, the detective is informed that the dead body of one of the missing boys, Jae-wook, is found underground on a beach 20 kilometers far from the city. It is revealed that the reason of his death was a bronchial asthma attack, since a person had to bury him underground. The case turns from missing to kidnapping. Weeks pass after the incident, but still the other boys are missing. Without Sung-min, Soo-rin will become her older introverted self. She too is as confused as everybody. However, nobody believes her while she says the reality. One day, she hears a noise from outdoor. On checking, she sees a man walking to the woods. She follows him and enters deep into the jungle. She goes after him and follows him until deep into the forest. After running for a few minutes, she sits on the ground and the man also stops. He slowly walks towards her and looks at her in fascination as Soo-rin freezes in fear. The man speaks for the first time, claiming that he's Sung-min. After listening his name, Soo-rin comes out of the shocked state and, seeing the opportunity, runs away crying. She ends up in front of her stepfather's car and quickly tells him about the man. The police are delighted about the incident and they begin searching the forest to look for the man, assuming that he is the kidnapper. Detective On asks her about the kidnapper and she explains that he was pretending to be Sung-min. The policemen do not find the kidnapper but find Soo-rin's diary that he and Sung-min leave notes for each other. She is shocked to see the pages as they are filled with Sung-min's notes. Using their code language of symbols, he has written everything about what happened after she went to the cave to pick up her hairpins. The guys become curious to know what is inside the egg, so Sung-min breaks it by throwing on the ground, without waiting for Soo-rin. To their dismay, it turns out to be empty. When Soo-rin doesn't come back after some time, Sung-min goes inside the tunnel and finds that she is frozen in her place. He tries to talk to her by waving his hand, but she doesn't answer. A few moments later, he notices that a drop of water is frozen mid-air. He comes out of the cave and sees upwards to notice the bird is also frozen in the air. The guys go to the city and see that everyone, including their families, have paused at their respective places. This makes them realize that everything in this world has frozen except the three of them, meaning that they can do whatever they want. They are on top of the world for the first few days. They eat and drink whatever they want, go to sleep whenever they want, and play around whole day. After a month or so, they get bored, so they decide to leave the city and move to another, to see if they are really the only people on Earth who can walk. However, their plan goes awry when they learn that the water in the ocean has also frozen, which means the boat will sink. Back in the present, Soo-rin acknowledges that the man who approached her in the forest was actually Sung-min. She stops reading because now her first priority is to get the police away from him. She thinks that if they find him, they will definitely arrest him for being a kidnapper, so she claims to have lied about seeing someone in the woods. The police believe her and she continues to read the notes. Several months later, boys start living inside a tent at the mall. Jae-wook's health worsens day by day as he has asthma and his inhaler stops working. Due to increased suffocation, he slowly passes away in front of his friends. Sung-min and Tae-shik are deeply shocked with a heavy heart. They bury their friend's body under the ground on a nearby beach. Similarly, 5 years pass, but the world remains the same. The boys have now grown into teenagers. Although they have been living in isolation for so many years, they still hope that someday the world will return to normal. Sung-min believes that when they turn 20, the world will resume itself. In case it actually happens, they steal a little money from everyone to get rich. However, even when they turn 20, nothing happens. They gradually lose hope and begin to live in a wooden house in the forest. One day, isolation gets the best out of Sung-min. He screams and yells to stop everything. Tae-shik witnesses it from afar and loses all hope. A few days later, Sung-min notices that the moon is changing shape, meaning the world is about to start all over again. He goes in search of Tae-shik but finds him nowhere. He searches for him all over the island and finally reaches the last cliff. There, he finds Tae-shik's clothes on the ground and realizes that his friend has jumped into the water. He even jumps behind his friend as a last resort. But at that very moment, the world resumes. He comes out of the water and gets mesmerized by the moving nature. After reading the notes, Soo-rin runs to the wooden house and finally sees her friend. They decide to tell the story to the world but are unsure whether anyone will believe them or not. Meanwhile, CCTV footage reveals to the police that Sung-min is in the forest. They believe him to be the kidnapper. At night, Sung-min comes to Soo-rin's room. Since he has been living alone for so long, he fears that he will harm himself to relieve the pain. The next day, Tae-shik's parents visits at the construction site, blaming Do-kyun for their child's disappearance. They believe that their son has been killed in an explosion, and Soo-rin is making up stories to save her stepfather. Meanwhile, Soo-rin and Sung-min go to the orphanage where Sung-min lived. Soo-rin explains everything to the warden and comes out to call Sung-min. However, she is dragged by her father at the same time. Sung-min goes to the warden and tells her everything he used to do as a child. She is shocked, but she still is not ready to believe him. Do-kyun locks Soo-rin in her room, but Sung-min enters through the back door and sets her free. They run away from home to decide what they have to do now. Soo-rin remembered the old times seeing the second egg in the cave. She suggests using that second egg. She can return as an adult to prove to everyone that Sung-min is innocent. However, Sung-min is against the idea as he knows how difficult it is to stay alone in isolation. Instead of letting him go through what he felt over the years, he would be named the kidnapper. Do-kyun sees that her daughter is missing and finds her and Sung-min's picture on her phone and goes straight to the wooden house. He attacks Sung-min and tries to take Soo-rin back home, but Sung-min manages to knock him out and run away with her. The following day, police investigate the wooden house in the forest and declare that the kidnapper is manipulating Soo-rin by making her believe he is Sung-min. The news of their disappearance is on TV, so the police soon find their location. A chase ensues between them and the police, when Soo-rin deliberately gets herself in to save Sung-min. She asks him to meet her in the cave before parting ways. Detective On tries to convince Soo-rin that the kidnapper is lying to her, but she doesn't believe him. She pretends to want to go to the bathroom and runs towards the cave. She brings out the glowing egg and hands it to Sung-min, but he forbids to return it because he doesn't want her to use it. He's about to take the blame for killing his friends. He runs into the forest as Soo-rin follows him. At the same time, the police arrive and chase behind. They stop at the end of a cliff. An officer captures Sung-min and in the process pushes Soo-rin off a cliff. The detective tries to help Soo-rin but also ends up hanging off the cliff together with her. Sung-min tries to save them, but before he could do anything, they both fall back. To save them, Sung-min breaks the egg once more and stops time. A few seconds later, when Soo-rin wakes up, she is on a seashore with the detective. She realizes what Sung-min has just done to save her life. Although it is just a moment for her, but it must have been another long decade for Sung-min. She is then brought back home. While having dinner, she apologizes to her father for the whole thing she has executed and calls him dad for the first time. The detective comes to inquire how they managed to survive the fall. Soo-rin doesn't respond. However, he figures out that she was telling the truth all the time, although he never believed her. He suggests she deliver a false statement to the media saying that the kidnapper had manipulated her. This way, the individuals who are accusing her of killing her friends alongside the kidnapper can be proved wrong. Soo-rin is eventually finished telling her story to the psychiatrist. She is left shocked after listening to it all and decides to write a book on it. Some months later, Soo-rin is moving to a different city for her school. Before leaving, she meets the psychiatrist who gives her the book, which has now been published. On her way to the ferry, Soo-rin sees Sung-min through the window of her car and runs to meet him but finds no one. But a while later, the two meet at the deck. The film ends as they stare at each other. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on the notification and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.